I called it Halachic and Ideological Challenges Jews in Pluralistic Society, Forming Halachic Fundementals and Religious Tolerance. I decided to talk about this issue just because you all came here somehow, and you probably know some of those issues, but we will need to try to analyze them and see how Jews really had to deal with other societies, other religions, and what can we learn from it even when you live here in Israel. So let's start. And also we'll go through few interesting things in terms of the differences between the time of the Mishnah, talking about between 0 to 2nd century, and to our times. Many things change, and we'll see how exactly it changed. So let's see. The Mishnah says the following in Masechet Avodah Zarah. That's the first Mishnah in the Masechet. First source on the first page. You even have the English, which I will not rely on. So, לפני עדיהן של עובדי כוכבים 3 ימים, אסור לשאת ולתת עמהן, להשאילן ולשאול מהן, להלוותן וללוות מהן, לפורען ולפרוע מהן. So, 3 days before I will call it a pagan holiday, or a non-Jewish holiday, you're not allowed to do any business with them for 3 days before. You're not allowed to negotiate with them, you're not allowed to do business with them, you're not allowed to lend them utensils or things like that, or to borrow from them. You can't give them a loan, and you cannot get a loan from them. You cannot even pay back the loan that you took, and you shouldn't get a payment for the loan that you gave them. Before we'll go into the why, just try to understand how many days can you work? If you take all the Jewish Chagim, and don't forget, 2nd days, and sometimes you have a 3-day Chag, right? You remember those things? Okay, so between the Jewish Chagim and the non-Jewish Chagim, and the 3 days before, so how many days do you really have working days? If you have a week that you have Pesach on a Motzei Shabbat, let's say, and Sunday, Monday, and then there is a non-Jewish Chag on a Tuesday, or on a Friday, so you can't do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, so the entire week you are off. I mean, it's good if you go to Florida for Pesach, but if you stay home, that's a problem. So we obviously have an issue of just the reality of the Isur, but it seems to be this is the time of the Mishnah. Now we all know the Mishnah was composed where? In Israel. Mishnah is being composed in Israel. They're well aware of what's going on in Israel, and we are talking still 0 to 2nd century. We are not talking about Christians. We're not talking about Muslims. What were we talking about? Pagans. That's it. That's what we have. Okay. So maybe you have early Christians towards the end of the 2nd century, because you do have in the Mishnayot, you do have some kind of comments about them. So we don't know yet the reason. Why can't I do business with them 3 days in advance? But let's leave that aside. We will deal with that a little bit later on. Rabbi Yehuda omer nifrain mehen. Rabbi Yehuda says, no. If you gave them a loan, get the payback. Get the payment. Why? Because it really caused them pain. You know, I gave him a loan for $2,000, and I go to him in the 3 days before his holiday, and I said to him, what? Pay me back. So he's obviously not happy to pay me back. So that's a good thing. Make him unhappy. אמרו לו, אף על פי שמצרו עכשיו, שמח הוא לאחר זמן. So the sages told Rav Yehuda, no, it's not true. Your logic is incorrect. Why? Because even though now it's probably painful for me to pay, but after a while, you have some kind of a satisfaction. You know what? I paid my debt, I'm free. So I don't want to give him or her that satisfaction either. Okay. When you think about this Mishnah, with all its complications, the first question that we need to ask ourselves, obviously, is what? Why? Why do you have such a law? Why to mitigate and to restrict the negotiation and the business with non-Jews 3 days before their Chag? So, most of the opinions in the Gemara and in the Rishonim, that basically claims that the idea is that we don't want him to what? To go to his idol and to thank his idol for what? For the prosperity and the success that he had. You are aiding him in what? In worshipping his idols, and you shouldn't do it as a Jew. Even though you are not forcing him to worship an idol, you are not telling him to worship an idol, but you know that what? That he is going to do it. So therefore, you are not allowed to be Messiah. What is a Messiah? Someone that assists him in doing something that he shouldn't do. Because even though he's not Jewish, still he shouldn't worship idols. Yes?
Why is it before the holidays? Why is it not all the time? In other words, whenever you're going to pay him, he's going to be happy and thank his God.
So probably, good question, and I'm not an expert on paganism, but just for a while I'll just pretend. Part of it is really that the 3 days is when they get ready. So everything that is being done in those 3 days, he will channel it towards his God. That's A. And B, also can use some of the proceeds in order to what? To enhance his idol worshipping. So that's definitely something that you don't have just during the year. Okay. So now, that's the time of the Mishnah. And the Gemara in Avodah Zarah talks about what can you do, what you cannot do for a while. Says the Rambam in Hilchot Avodat Kochavim, Knaanim Ovdei Akum hem. The Canaanites are pagans, are idol worshippers. V'yom Rishon hu Yom Eidam. Oops. And Sunday is their holiday. So what pagans is he talking about? He is talking about Christianity now. So that's 12th century. The Rambam definitely lived among Muslims, but why would he call them Knaanim? Right? Canaanites. But he definitely identified the Sunday as their holiday. And basically, the Rambam suggests that everything that we found in the Mishnah in Avodah Zarah applies on what? On the Christians of today, 12th century. ולפיכך, אסור ולתת עמהם בארץ ישראל. Therefore, you are not allowed to what? To negotiate with them or to do any business with them. Where? In דווקא in ארץ ישראל, יום חמישי ויום שישי, שבכל שבת ושבת. So every week, you are not allowed to do any business with them in Eretz Israel on Thursday, Friday, and Shabbat. So Shabbat is obviously known, but Motzei Shabbat there is. So
Sunday is their holiday.
yes, so 3 days before, and including and the Sunday, right? For sure. So Thursday, Friday, Shabbat, Sunday, you are off. Now, everyone understands that it's a problem. It is a problem. Besides the fact that it's a problem, it seems to be that the Rambam is talking only about where? Eretz Israel. Since when? What? It's chovat haaretz? It seems to be it's chovat what? Haguf. It's on you. It's not on the land. It has nothing to do with the land of Israel. Okay. ואין צריך לומר יום ראשון עצמו שהוא אסור בכל מקום. Sunday, you're not allowed to do any business with them on Sunday everywhere. Not only in Eretz Israel. But the 3-day thing is only where? In Eretz Israel. וכן נוהגים עמהם בכל עידיהם. And this is the practice that you need to have every time that they have a holiday. So the holiday itself is prohibited everywhere. The 3 days before, it's only where? In Eretz Israel. Why? Good. See? Come up with some kind of ideas. What do you think? Eretz HaKodesh. So what? I mean, it's wonderful, but so what?
Lots of preparation.
I think the Rambam is distancing himself from the halachic problem, referring to a small area that he doesn't know as yet. First he lived among Christians, he did not, and then he lived among Muslims whom he did not consider to be idol worshippers. And so it restricts that prohibition to a very small area and doesn't directly affect him.
So you basically accuse him of having a self-agenda.
He's talking to the Jews of his time.
Right, so, but why Dafka in Eretz Israel? Why not to talk about all Christians everywhere?
Well, in Eretz Israel, you want to have a Jewish country.
The what?
You want to increase the business among Jews.
He wants to increase the business among Jews. So in Eretz Israel, there are not too many Jews, or they can handle it without it?
Well, you want to have it in the outside world. You're surrounded by Goyim, and you have to deal with the Goyim. that in Eretz Israel you can deal less with the Goyim and you should deal more with the Jews.
Aha.
It's going to be a Jewish country.
Okay, Naftali.
In America, until recently, stores were closed on Sunday in America. All the shopping centers, I can remember. So it was there was something that at least they had some idea of rest and having God and not just. But today that's not happening.
It is happening.
To get to.
Closed on Sunday?
Bergen County.
Bergen County.
Memphis until 12th.
Are they open now in America?
Yeah, of course. He said
Until 12, I think they are closed until 12 and then they open at 12. Not all of them. Yeah, Chick-fil-A is not. That's when you know you can drive on Poplar pretty easily on Sunday. The thing is that, Naftali, I'll take your comment in a minute, is that definitely the Sunday that the Rambam is talking about, or before, it's not the same Sunday we have today, even in America, even when some of it's closed, not all of it is closed down. But also we might say that the Rambam understood that the Mishnah was composed in Eretz Israel for the people of Eretz Israel, and it might be some kind of a financial thing that in Eretz Israel the interaction between Jews and non-Jews was minimized. Might be. I'm not saying that it was always like that. But in Chutz La'aretz, you can't just do business with your own people. At the end of the day, you are running out of clients. Okay? And especially when, if it's good for you, the other guy is going to open up what? The same business. Okay? So you are running out of clients. So you need to increase it. The only way to increase it is that to have the general society, and you cannot restrict it for 3 days before. Okay. So until now, now we are in the 12th century, the Rambam is still saying what? You need to keep what the Mishnah says. At least in Eretz Israel, the 3 days, but the holiday itself, you definitely cannot do any business with him. So, the Rambam, in the second source that we saw, says, Kna'anim Ovdei Akum Hem. Now, we don't know why he called them Kna'anim, but he called them Ovdei Akum. So what does it mean, Ovdei Akum? So take a look at the next Rambam. The Rambam in Ilchot Shuvah in Perek Gimel Halacha Zayin says the following. Chamisha hem anikraim minim. There are 5 types of people that are called minim. What is minim? האומר שאין שם אלוה ואין לעולם מנהיג. One who denies God or denies any ruling of a divine force. ואומר שיש שם מנהיג אבל הם 2 או יותר. And someone who says there is a God but there is maybe 1 God, 2 gods, 3 gods, right? Okay. ואומר שיש שם ריבון אחד, אבל שהוא גוף ובעל תמונה. And someone says what? That there is God, but he has a body or a form. וכן האומר שאינו לבדו הראשון וצור לכל. Or someone who says that he was not the first God, but there was someone that preceded him. וכן העובד כוכב או מזל, or if someone worship a כוכב or some kind of another deity, כדי להיות מליץ בינו ובין ריבון העולמים, כל אחד מ5 אלו הוא מין. Any one of these 5 types is a min. Now, where is Christianity here? At least in the 12th century. More than 1 God. Okay? More than 1 God and the goof. Very good. So, I'm not going to give a class now about the different levels of Christianity and Catholicism and others, but the idea is, in the basis of the religion, they believe that there is more than 1 God, there is some kind of Trinity, and also there might be some kind of a body to this God. So, according to the Rambam, obviously, Christians are under the minim, they are of the avodat kochavim, and therefore what? The things for the Mishnah applies. Okay. Tov. That's wonderful. Yes.
So just wondering, we still don't have a reason why not to do this. Could it be that they felt that if the not Christians, but non-Jews are involved in the worship of their God, then it's dangerous for Jews to be in too close a contact with them during that time, because they will possibly be more influenced by the religion of these neighbors of theirs. And what they're trying to do have them only do business when it's likely that neither side is concerned about religion?
It might be a consideration, but it's not the main consideration. The main consideration that's being said in the Talmud is more about that you don't want to assist him to worship his idols. There is in the Gemara also a consideration of the closeness that we do not want to create between Jews and non-Jews. Yeah, but that's not the but I'm saying that's not the main cause. It's, I would say, probably a secondary cause. Okay.
I'll take that.
Okay. So this is the Rambam, 12th century. He's in Spain, and then later on he goes through Israel for a while, and then he ends up in Egypt. Okay, so he's great. The problem is, I'm taking you in just a second. Okay, go ahead. No.
I was raised in Philadelphia, and when I was a kid, the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Philadelphia Phillies could not start a game on Sunday after the seventh inning because Goyle went to church in the evening also. That's a historic.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. Okay, so that was Rambam. that was the Rambam, not the basket, not the baseball thing. The Rambam did not talk about baseball, but the Rambam, 12th century. He's in Spain. Now he's in Egypt. His communication with Christians is minimal. But there are other poskim that had a lot to do with Christians, and they are where? In France. And one of the laws that the Talmud brings is that you are not allowed to do shutfut with nochrim, partnership with a non-Jew. Why? Because one of the reasons is that you are afraid that there is going to be a dispute between you and him, and then he will need to take a shvuah. He will need to take an oath. And in the oath, he's going to to pronounce the name of his idol, and you are basically causing him to do it. Okay? Now, this is an interesting thing because, many Jews have non-Jewish partners, so they can what?
Work on Shabbat.
That they can business be open on Shabbat, Chagim, Pesach, and all of it, right? So here, that's what the Gemara says. So take a look at Tosfot. Tosfot says the following. Page 2. אמר רבי שמואל, כל שכן שבועה עצמה שאין לקבל ממנו. So Rabbi Shmuel says that you are not allowed to be partners with him, but also you definitely cannot get a shvuah from him. Why? Because in the shvuah, in the oath, he's going to pronounce his idol's name. ורבינו תם אומר. So Rabbeinu Tam is Rashi's grandson. Maybe he saw Rashi, but he didn't learn with him. Rashi died at 1105. Rabbeinu Tam was maybe 5 years old. But Rabbeinu Tam is in the 12th century. And he's in France. And that's the beginning really of 12th century. And he says the following. מותר לקבל הימנו השבועה קודם שיפסיד. If you see that without the shvuah, without the oath, you are going to lose money, tell him to take an oath. But the Gemara says what? You can't. So, he says, כדאמר בפרק כמה דמסכת עבודה זרה, דמיל ועל פה נפרעין ממנו מפני שהוא כמציל מידם. He says, okay, introduction. We know that we have two types of halva'a, of a loan. One with a shtar, with a document. So it's obviously more valid than you can have a proof. And then there is be'al peh. What is be'al peh? We just talk to each other, right? Okay. Mil ve'al peh has a problem because it relies on our trust. There are no witnesses, there is no document, there is nothing. It's my word against yours. So if in a mil ve'al peh, we say that what? That you can get the payment even in 3 days to their holiday. Why? Because if he is willing to give it to you, can be what? A one-time opportunity. Then he can deny it. And therefore, mil ve'al peh, you are allowed to collect the money. So he says, ולא חיישינן דילמה אזיל ומודה, ואף על גב דהתם ספק ואחא ודאי, מכל מקום בזמן הזה כולם נשבעים בקדושים שלהם, ואין תופסים בהם אלוהות. ואף על פי, okay, so first that. So the Rabbeinu Tam says, I'm not that concerned about them taking an oath. But he's going to mention is a deity. Says Rabbeinu Tam, so what? Everyone mentioned their deity, but no one really associated with what? With religion or holiness. When you say, oh my God, is that a religious statement or is that a phrase? It's become a phrase, nothing religious with it. Okay? Or when many people, including Jews, say G. Okay? And they are not talking about Yehoshua. Okay? Is that a religious statement? No, this is not a religious statement. This is just a phrase. So Rabbeinu Tam, already in the 12th century, says, Rega, it's nice to be a Rambam sitting in Egypt with Muslims. That, by the way, the Rambam looks at the Muslims, says, not of the Avodah Zarah at all. You are allowed to daven in a mosque. I'm not sure how can you get out of there, but you can go in and you can daven there. But you are not allowed to go into a church to daven. And to go to a church, that's a different issue. But the idea is what? Is that according to the Rambam, it's pretty easy. Obviously, you can say it's not allowed because you have nothing to do with those Christians. Rabbeinu Tam understood, and you can see Rabbeinu Tam in many places. I don't know if he was a businessman, but he definitely supported himself not via being a Rosh Yeshiva. You know how many students Rabbeinu Tam had in his yeshiva, quote unquote? Take a guess.
20. 4.
How many students?
Between 10 and 12, probably. Yeah. And do you see how many Talmidei Chachamim he was able to create? And we understand how much he influenced how we look at the Talmud? You don't need too many Talmidim. You just need to have the right ones. Okay? So the thing is, that was the yeshivot that we are talking about. The Maharam Rothenburg, I think we have a documentation somehow based on his house and the things that we know. Maybe he had 25 students. That's what it is. The what?
Not Lakewood.
They started like that. So the thing is that we have, according to Rabbeinu Tam, he says, today things change. This is where the point come to. This is the point that I want us to focus on. Rabbeinu Tam, 12th century, around the same time of the Rambam. Okay? Two totally different perspectives. Rabbeinu Tam looks at the non-Jews around him, which were all what? Christians. And he says already then, in the 12th century, when you think that they were religious and adukim, that they were like committed to religion, he says, yes, they might go to church every morning and evening and morning. However, when they take an oath and they say the name of their God, it's really not a religious service. That's what Rabbeinu Tam claims. And therefore, you can be their partner and you can allow them to take a shvuah if you see that what? That you are going to lose money.
He also has to be pragmatic because he's got everybody's got surrounded by Christians.
Okay. Just imagine if
Yeah,
Yafeh. Let's say you don't even have them as a partner. You sold them a shirt and they tell you, I'll pay you tomorrow. And you say, sure. You call tomorrow and say, where's my payment? What are you talking about? Okay? אני נשבע לך. I'll take an oath. Knowing that what? That you will say, no, don't take an oath. Those Jews will be destroyed financially. So Rabbeinu Tam, and this is now the question, and it's a tricky question, be careful. When you see a change in halacha, which is based on a change in what? In reality. Rabbeinu Tam basically says what? The reality changed. When they take an oath now and they mention the name of their God, it's not their God, it's just a phrase. Does the change in society and in their reality influence halacha? Or no? He said the halacha is that taking an oath like that is really not such a problem, and also it matched to what? To the reality that I live in. Now, why I'm telling you it's a tricky question? Because you understand that if we say that the only option is the first one, which is what? Changes in reality dictates halacha, we are opening what? A Pandora box.
Slippery slope.
You understand it? Now, we don't need to be afraid of it. I'm just saying that we need to be aware of what we say. Now, according to Rabbeinu Tam, he does not say that the Christians are not pagans or they are lovely people, that we need to, it doesn't say anything. He's just talking about what? This business and the oath. That's what he's saying for now. Okay? Now, he completes it, I just need to complete the sentence. ואף על פי שמה שמזכירים עמהם שם שמיים וכוונתם לדבר אחר, מכל מקום אין זה שם עבודת כוכבים גם דעתם לעושה שמיים. ואף על פי שמשתתפים שם שמיים ודבר אחר, לא אשכחן דאסור לגרום לאחרים לשתף לפני עיוור לקה, דבני נוח לא הוזהרו על כך. I'm going to translate. He says, look, I understand. They might say, I'm taking an oath in the name of God and the Savior. Okay? So you are basically, they are meshatfim shem shamayim with their God. It's a shituf. It's called shituf. And they are not allowed to do it. And we are not supposed to what? To help them. He says no. He says even when they mention their God, they still have in mind what? Our God. Now, this is one of two things. He had no clue what they are saying, or he knew very well what they are saying, and therefore he said they really mean to say what? The one God. Now, look, very much like OUisrael, we read more, but if you just imagine, if you talk to a regular Christian farmer in France in the 12th century, what do you think he knew about his religion? Klum kimat. Almost nothing. The thing that he knew was what? That the Jews crucified his God, and that what?
Who was Jewish?
Not sure if he knew that either. He knew that what? That he needs to confess his sins and to give money to the priest. He knew that his land is probably owned by the church. Okay? Does he know theology of religion? Does he know how to read? No. By the way, as a side note, most of the businesses the Jews did, talking about big businesses, was with whom? With the clerks in the church, because they knew how to read and write and to do some math. The other 95% of the population had no clue what's flying. I know it's hard for us to believe it and to understand it, but that's be'erech what I know in England, for example, most of the major transactions were between the Jews who knew how to read, write, and to do math, and the clerks, and the atzilim, the knights, and whatever, anyone who knew how to read and write and read, and that's it. The others, the farmers, just klum. They are amei aratzot, didn't know a thing. Says Rabbeinu Tam, even when they mention whatever they are being told to mention, they have no clue. They believe in the God who created earth and heaven. So take a look, 12th century, two poskim, two totally different realities, two totally different conclusions. Now, one more thing. According to Rabbeinu Tam, he basically says that whatever the Mishnah and the Gemara says do not apply anymore, right? That's basically what he says. The Gemara says you are not allowed to. I'm telling you, you are what? You are allowed to. The Gemara says you are not allowed to take an oath from them. I'm telling you what? You are allowed. So what do you do with the Gemara and the Mishnah?
Different circumstances.
Different circumstances. So the Gemara does not apply anymore. The what?
Doesn't mention Eretz Yisrael. He's talking about
Mamash no.
where he lives.
Sure. Yeah. This idea of Eretz Yisrael is a very interesting invention of the Rambam,
Said it was Eretz Yisrael.
which is very problematic because the Mishnah does not talk only about Eretz Yisrael ever, unless they say it.
It's a slippery slope.
Yeah, but there are two slippery slopes. You know, every slippery slope has two sides. So the idea is, yes.
No, I was just wondering, when you mention the word halacha, it makes it sound extremely serious. So the question is, like some of these things that are stated here, what is the origin of this halacha, as opposed to thinking of it as an opinion of these people who state it based on their view of Jewish belief. In other words, it doesn't say anywhere in the Torah that you can't do business with a non-Jew for 3 days before here and there.
Sure.
So what, in other words,
So I said the reason for that.
what was the basis?
All right. So the reason for
And
that is the
maybe
psuk.
that basis is then changeable.
Right. So the psukim. I agree. If Dov is asking a question, it says where in the Torah it says that you're not allowed to do business 3 days before. The answer is it's nowhere in the Torah. It's obviously a rabbinic decree. However, this rabbinic decree is in order to fulfill psukim that talks about the idea of distancing yourself from pagans. In the Talmud, from Daf Bet Amud Aleph until Vav Amud Aleph, talks about this psukim. Now, you can say, with all due respect to this rabbinic enactment, you know what, does not apply anymore, goodbye, thank you, okay? Right. But that's with everything in halacha. And without that, we'll have a problem. Okay, so we have definitely tremendous respect to what they said. The question is, Rabbeinu Tam is saying, I'm not saying that they were wrong. They were right in their time, but it's not right in my time. It might be that in 10 years from now, they will continue to be right. It might be. But where it depends on what, and this was my question, the tricky question. If you tell me that just because the circumstances changed and the reality changed, so I changed the halacha, but it's not permanent, it's temporarily. Why? Because in 50 years from now, meaning the Mishnah does still apply. It's just the circumstances change, but if the circumstances are going to change again, so the Mishnah will apply. That's the nafkamina, that's the ramification. But if I say what? The Mishnah ceased to exist. So even if the circumstances will change, the Mishnah does not apply anymore. Yes?
I think it's also where the Rabbanim come in.
Sure.
It's for someone himself just to say, and doesn't go back and see from where it comes from, and the Masorah, and just say, look, today it doesn't apply, it's very different. But then that's where I always compare, like, as opposed to the difference as a doctor and a Rav, this is where the piece where the Rabbanim are very important.
I think the rabbis are always important, but
But I think it shows that you can't just take out of context, well, today you can do this, if you don't have the background and understanding of where the source and where it comes from.
I agree. The only thing is that you can see two major poskim that came up with totally two different conclusions. So if I'm a Jew and I'm calling the Rambam, can I do a partnership with a non-Jew? Can I take a shvuah from him? The Rambam will tell me what? If you are in Eretz Israel 3 days before, you can't. On the holiday itself, you definitely cannot. Okay? I call Rabbeinu Tam. Okay? I Google Rabbeinu Tam. And Rabbeinu Tam says to me what?
No problem.
You can do it. I'm not saying no problem, but you can do it. If you need it and there, you can do it. So what do I do?
Get a consensus?
Okay. So take a look. Okay.
According to your explanation.
Oh, I didn't give any yet.
No, this one that you just said,
Uh-huh.
that if it applies sometime in the
Mhm.
future, you could apply to everything we do.
Sure, that's what I said. We are opening a Pandora box. Exactly. I didn't give my opinion yet. I'm just opening it up for our discussion because we're going to see, and that's it.
We hear you.
זה לא עובד. Maybe I touched something. I don't know.
Maybe we're looking at it from the wrong perspective. And perhaps the halacha
The light's on,
from
but I think it wasn't on for a minute. That blue light wasn't on for a minute.
This is to promote the Avad to believe in one God. And if we distance ourselves from their business practices, perhaps they would see the light.
It might be the only problem with that is that in many places in Chutz La'aretz, without businesses with non-Jews, we will not be able to survive. Not only that, we know Jews who built churches, who sold Christmas decorations, okay, crosses and all of it in order to what? To be able to sustain their families. And all the ribit, all the what we were accused in interest and everything was to whom? not to Jews. We can't give alva beribit to Jews. So we obviously have an issue. But the problem is, if you tell me that every time there is a financial burden, we're going to change the halacha, so all those books here, we can just throw them and just say whatever sounds good to you, right? But we don't operate like that. You understand the issues, okay? If you want to understand it more, let's see the other Tosfot. In Bechorot, Tosfot Bechorot, in Daf Bet Amud Bet, Tosfot says like that: Od peresh Rabbeinu Tam. Okay, Rabbeinu Tam also explains that what? The Bazman Hazeh, that in today's life, in the 12th century, second source on the page. Kulam nishbaim bekodashim, ve'en tofsim bahem Elohut. So everyone mentioned their God's name, but no one really think about what? The religious connotation. ואף על פי שמזכירים עמהם שם שמיים, even though that they really mention like the name of their God. וכוונתם לדבר אחר, מכל מקום אין זה שם עבודת כוכבים, כי דעתם לשם עושה שמיים וארץ. And even though משתתף שם שמיים ודבר אחר, and even though they mention the name of God and their God, אין כאן לפני עיוור לא תיתן מכשול, דבני נוח לא הוזהרו על כך, ולדידן לא אשכחן איסור בגרם שיתוף. Basically, Tosfot again quotes Rabbeinu Tam that says exactly what? The same thing. So you see that this opinion of Rabbeinu Tam is cemented. It's something strong that's being repeated a few times, so you know that he probably said it. Now, just as a side note, it's not that Rabbeinu Tam wrote it, okay? These Tosfotim were edited maybe after 100 years after he died, but that was the Masoret from Rabbeinu Tam that's what you do. Now, when I look at Rabbeinu Tam and what he did, obviously it's noble and it's new, it's innovative, it's courageous, all of that. But it's really, and it's practical for sure, but it's still in the realm of what? Of trying to solve the issue prat by prat, detail by detail. Meaning, I have an issue. Can I take a shvua from a non-Jew? Answer is yes. Can I be his partner? The answer is yes. But Rabbeinu Tam's mindset, perception on the general society was the same thing like we have in the Mishnah and in the Gemara. Nothing changed. By the way, I don't blame him. You know, at the time of the Crusades, in the 12th century in France, they almost killed him. He was saved by a knight who knew him and saved him. He was already beaten. He almost died. And this knight somehow came and saved him, saved Rabbeinu Tam. So Rabbeinu Tam knew exactly who is he dealing with. So his approach towards them was not like you can say that, oh, he was very liberal and pluralistic. This is not the issues. Those are not the terms we are talking about. He is talking about being practical and also understand the halacha according to his opinion.
Is there also a possibility that the fact is that they also believed in what we call the Old Testament, and that the original of what the idea of monotheism was incorporated originally in Christianity, except then they.
It might. I didn't see that.
Allowed them to hedge his bets. I don't know.
I didn't see that. Does not mean it does not exist, but I didn't see that as a reason. I think the reason is more the fact that they have no clue what they are saying, which is based on what the Gemara says. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Min'ag avotehem biyedehem. They are just doing tradition. They also have a tradition, lahavdil, and they don't know anything about it. Okay. The one who really made a tremendous change in perspective was Rabbi Menachem HaMeiri. The Meiri, who lived in the end of 13th century, beginning of the 14th century in Perpignan. We know it's now considered Provence, but before that, French changed a lot, and things sometimes were considered France, sometimes it was considered Spain, whatever it is. But Rabbi Menachem HaMeiri, that we found his manuscripts 100 and something years ago, it was not known to many of the poskim because the manuscript was not found. But now we find it, and he has an extensive work on the Gemarot, and also he quotes a lot of the Rishonim before him. He has a tendency to accord with Rambam and Rashi, but not always. And he has a tremendous access to many Rishonim that were before him. So he says the following. And what he says, it's a revolution. עיקר הדברים נראה לי, says the main things that in my opinion is, שדברים אלו כולם לא נאמרו אלא על עובדי האלילים וצורותיהם וצלמיהם. He says everything that it says in the Mishnah and in Gemara in Avodah Zarah, which by the way does not talk only about what? You know what, let me digress for a second. When we talk about the relationship between Jews and non-Jews, you have what? Well, let's create categories. Business, marriage, what else? Socialization, perception. Non-Jews had their own perceptions on us. We had our perception on them. Always like that. When you have two societies that don't know each other, or they don't know each other too well, they start developing some kind of preconceived ideas, and there is a lot of animosity and all of it. There is also some kind of reciprocity. If you learn minhagim, you see that sometimes minhagim that are totally Christian became converted into Judaism, and some minhagim from Judaism were converted into Christianity. So you see it many times, also with Muslim countries, same thing. Now, having that in mind, we understand that sometimes we can have restrictions that will never change, such as, no, I'm talking about between Jews and non-Jews. Intermarriage, that will be the ultimate one, right? That will not change. Even Rabbeinu Tam is not going to say what? Because they have no clue what they are saying, you are allowed to marry them, right? This is not happening. So we have the changes can happen where? In the business side, in the socializations which will not cause marriage, but that will be a tricky one, because we always have a fear of what? Of too much socialization will bring you to marriage. And then you have perceptions. What are the perceptions? So I'm going to tell you something, and you're going to, I'll say it now so I can escape. The Crusaders, so they started at the end of the 11th century, 1096 in Germany, and then they went to France. And there are two major articles about it. I think it's only in Hebrew. I don't know, maybe it was in English too. We Jews, when we read the Crusaders and we read about the Crusaders, we focus on what? On the Kiddush Hashem the Jews did, right? The sanctification of the name of God, that they jump into the fire, and even there are some testimonies that they killed each other in order not to convert to Christianity, and they killed their children, and then there was a halachic discussion about, but we are amazed by the fact of what? Of the Kiddush Hashem the Jews did, which by the way was not all the Jews, but some of the Jews did. How do you think the non-Jews viewed it? That they see a mother kill her child so he will not convert to Christianity.
Cruelty.
So you can look at that as, wow, they are willing to do that in order not to convert to Christianity. This religion is incredible. Or you can say, this religion is crazy. It's crazy. The child can continue to live, so he will believe in God and in whatever. Well, for that you kill your own child? Are you crazy? And the interesting part in these two articles is OUIsrael and I forgot the other one. They are dealing with the issue of how the Jewish reaction to the Crusaders was viewed by the Crusaders themselves. For some of them, it was reaffirmation for what they heard in church, that the Jews are what? Are crazy or devil. Okay? Because who is going to do something like that to their children? So, why am I telling you that? Just to talk about perception. Now you have other perception from the Jewish perspective. You know that you are not allowed to, according to the Gemara, you are not allowed to ask a non-Jew to babysit for your kids. Now you can imagine why. You are not allowed them to ask you to babysit for your animals.
Because they'll do Avodah Zarah.
No, Avodah Zarah, you are too nice.
What?
You are too nice.
What do they do? Oh.
Okay? That's perspective, perceptions. Perceptions from one society on another. Can you imagine what they think when they see us shaking the lulav? Do you think what we think about them going in a mass in the middle of the night with whatever they have in their hands? Okay, so when you don't know, or even when you know and you think it's crazy, you create perceptions. And sometimes, look, the blood libations. How can you, with a normal brain, can think something like that? Answer. What's the answer? If you open up the Bible, the Old Testament, does the Old Testament says that you need to kill a Christian boy in order to what? To bake matzot? No. But why would you believe that I can do it? Because I'm crazy. I have a crazy religion. I'm a devil. And because I'm a devil, I'm a Satan. That's what I do.
And you have to blame somebody else.
Leave alone the blame and the anti-Semitism and all of that. I'm talking just about how can you come up with something like that. So, and how do I, a Jew, can come up with the idea that a non-Jew, because he doesn't believe in the way I believe, he's going to want to be able to, God forbid, to do terrible things to someone's child or to my animal? It's all perceptions. And there is fear, and there are decrees, so no one likes each other. Okay. Now, also, this is from England, I can tell you, because this is more my expertise, so I don't know, I'm not an expert on anything else, I'm probably not an expert on England either. But there was a time that Jews also had slaves and maidservants, like slave women and slave men. There was a time, I think in the beginning of the 12th century, that the church came up with a thing that Jews cannot have slaves, Christian slaves. And they need to give them what? Sunday off, weekends off, holidays off, and whatever. So when they had those slaves, they didn't go anywhere. So they basically were at the Jewish home and they didn't go anywhere. Now imagine, you go and you are an employee at a Jewish home. And you see that on Pesach, they take a cup of wine and they start do for the kinim, and after that they say, "Shfoch chamatcha el hagoyim asher lo yadaucha." Now, let's say he's a very inquisitive slave, and he says to his master, "Can you please explain to me what you say?" And the master says, "Oh, a great opportunity for chinuch, right? We are davening that God will destroy the goyim." This guy goes home for the weekend, and he goes to his priest, and he says to his priest, "What? You know, Passover night, they want us to be destroyed." The priest says, "Opportunity." You can understand that what's happened is that there is a transformation of information without too much of what? Of knowledge. And there is hate and there are preconceived ideas, so you can understand what's going on. By the way, I'm not trying to justify anything. I'm just trying to what? To describe the reality. So now, so if we have those 4 buckets, I called it like that, okay? Intermarriage, socializations, financial or business, and perceptions. So, as I said before, there are a few buckets that you cannot change, and there are a few buckets that you can change if you look at Christianity in a different way. So says the Meiri. It says, עיקר הדברים נראה לי, שדברים אלו כולם לא נאמרו, אלא על עובדי האלילים וצורותיהם וצלמיהם. אבל בזמנים הללו מותר לגמרי. It says, everything we spoke about, well, he will explain what does it mean, everything. Everything we spoke about in the Gemara, regarding what? The pagans, it's only about the pagans. It does not apply on Christians and Christianity. And he says, ומה שאמרו בגמרא נוצרי לעולם אסור. The Gemara says, נוצרי, what is a נוצרי? It seems to be like a Christian is always אסור, so there is no change. Says the מאירי, אני מפרשו מלשון נוצרים באים מארץ מרחק כאמור בירמיה, שקרא אותם העם נוצרים על שם נבוכדנצר, וידוע שצלם השמש היה בבבל, ושכל עם נבוכדנצר היו עובדים לו. וכבר ידעת שהחמה משמשת ביום ראשון כעניין ראשי ימים, I will explain in a minute, ומתוך כך היו קוראים לאותו יום נוצרי, על שם שהיה קבוע לנבוכדנצר, על צד ממשלת חמה שבו והדברים נראים וברורים. Which means, says the word Notzri does not mean only what? Christian. It means what? Or Nebuchadnezzar. You remember Nebuchadnezzar? Nebuchadnezzar made himself an idol. And he was like the sun. Sunday. Okay, that's why Sunday became a day of their worship. So it says it's not Christians. Now, to be very honest, nice, but I'm not going to build on it too much. But the Meiri built on it. And he says, look, Notzri does not mean necessarily Christian. And therefore, what is his conclusion? What does he want to accomplish? He wants to accomplish the following. I'm taking the Mishnah, I'm taking the Gemara, everything that it says there, which is not, we'll see in a minute, not in a minute, we'll probably see next week. Everything that is intermarriage or other things, that will not be allowed, but all the preceptions that we have on Christians and all the other restrictions of business cease to exist. The Ternachon does not cease to exist. Never existed. You with me? Rabbeinu, that's different than Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam says what? It existed, but now reality dictates that we need to what? To say that the circumstances change. The Meir says it never existed. Why? Because Christians were not even around. It was only about pagans. It's not about the circumstances that changed. We are talking about a different religion. So now he will need to explain why Christianity is what? It's not paganism. And why our perceptions on pagans should not be the same one on Christians. So how is he going to do it? Come next week.